Right guys, it's the Ginger Boy and I'm back. So as you already know, this is the unsolved mystery of DB Cooper. Now a lot of you may know DB Cooper because his whole like scandal thing was like probably one of the biggest unsolved mysteries in the world. But I'll give you a little story. So in the afternoon of November 24th, 1971, a middle-aged man with a briefcase bought a one-way ticket from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington. So it was like a domestic flight. Just a small plane, you know what I mean? On his own. The name he gave on his ticket was Dan Cooper, and he boarded Northwest Airlines 305 along with 36 other passengers and 6 aircrew. So it was a small flight, just businessmen usually. Um, nothing out of the ordinary so far. He was just dressed in a black suit, black briefcase, everything, just a businessman. And he sat at the back row of the plane. I think back then you could like choose where he sat. I don't know. And he just ordered a drink and had a smoke because obviously it was the 70s, so gang shit. Um, just after departure, now this is where it gets interesting. So just after departure, he turned to the flight attendant behind him called Florence Schaffner and handed her a note. The note said, "Miss, I have a bomb and I'd like you to sit next to me." So obviously she's like, "What the fuck? Like, you've got a bomb? What do you mean?" So yeah, so she sits next to him obviously because she doesn't want to get blown up and get everyone else blown up. So she complied and sat next to him. And then he opened his briefcase to show her that he had 8 sticks of dynamite. Now, whether this was real or not, it's, obviously there was no way of showing, so she just kept going along with it. Now he told her he had a few demands that he wanted to like everyone to carry out for him. Just a couple. He was like, oh, I'm not gonna impersonate him, but he basically told her that he wanted $200,000 in cash, all in twenties, so like $20 bills, by 5 p.m. And at this point, it was like 2 p.m., 3 p.m., and it was like a 1 hour flight. So by the time they land in Seattle, he basically wants the money there. And he also wanted four parachutes, two front parachutes and two back. I don't understand parachutes, but yeah. Um, and when they land at the airport, he demanded that they refuel the tank of the airplane because obviously he's going to fly away again. And he did threaten to blow up the plane if the demands were not met. So obviously they complied because they don't want the plane to be blown up. Um, Now Florence Schaffner then went to tell the pilots about the demands, while another attendant named Tina Mucklow sat next to Cooper and used the phone at the back to communicate with the rest of the crew. Now keep her name in mind because it was going to come back, Tina Mucklow. Now, so she was basically like the intermediary between like um, DB Cooper and the rest of the world, which is brave girl, brave girl. Now 305 flight 305 circled Seattle's airport for 1 hour and 30 minutes, while the DB Cooper like took the plane hostage and made sure that everything at the airport was all sorted out. Um, so yeah, the local authorities raced to get the money, parachute, and carry out the rest of the demands, and the plane eventually landed at 5:45 p.m. Where DB Cooper plus two allowed all the passengers plus two crew members to get off the flight. So he was left alone on the plane with the two pilots and the two attendants that he talked to, so Tina and the that Schaefer girl. And he informed the captain that he wanted to fly to Mexico City with the landing gear down and always below 10,000 feet. And he also wanted the back walkway to be let down. On this plane, there was like a steps that came out of the back of the plane, like these big planes where the vehicles will go inside. It was like that, but it was like workmen and stuff like that. So he wanted that let down. Um, but the flight configurations that he gave would not allow the flight to Mexico City. So all the people on the plane proposed to refuel in Sacramento, California, Yuma, Arizona, or Phoenix, Arkansas. But they actually ended up agreeing on Reno, Nevada. So at 7:36 p.m., the flight departed. After 5 minutes, he put a dark wraparound glasses on, like sunglasses around his face, which added to the famous sketch of him. And then after 5 minutes after takeoff, he told Tina Mucklow to leave him and go to the cockpit where the rest of the crew were. So he was basically, apart from the cockpit, he was alone on the plane. And they didn't know what he was doing because they locked the door of the cockpit. So the last sight of Cooper was when Tina Mucklow saw him at the back of the plane, above the walkway, looking ready to jump. So he had like the parachute on, and all of that stuff. He had the bag of money, like the ransom money. And then 3 hours later, they landed in Reno. And obviously the FBI investigated the plane and that. But the only explanation of Cooper's absence was that he jumped into the night sky from the plane with one of the parachutes, which is obviously the story because he wasn't on the plane, so he must have jumped. That's really the only. I mean, unless he fucking teleported, but you know what I mean. So once in Reno, as I said, the FBI investigated the plane. Cooper left behind a couple of things. He left behind a black clip-on tie, 8 cigarette butts, and 2 of the parachutes, because he was given 4, remember. And the confusing thing was that since neither the crew nor the 2 fighter jets that were escorting the plane saw Cooper jump, they had no idea where he was in between Seattle and Reno. Because the plane, he also ordered the plane lights to be turned off. So it would have actually been quite hard for the fighter jets team to see him jump because there was like no shadow or like silhouette at the back. But the last contact that the crew had with Cooper was at 8:05 p.m. when the crew offered assistance, but Cooper actually declined, so they didn't see him. But soon after, they felt the plane vibrate and assumed that it was the back door lowering. So it was fair to assume that he jumped at 8:05 p.m. or like roughly around then, which is only like, what is it, like 30 minutes after takeoff. So using the flight course of the plane and the last contact, the FBI predicted that he jumped 40 kilometers north of Portland, Oregon, close to where he actually began all of this. So they sent out search teams with like helicopters, dogs, and obviously people. But due to the bad weather and the terrain, the FBI were unable to find a single trace of Cooper or his drop zone. So they assumed that they made this like circle, like radius of where he could be, but it was like in the middle of a forest, like a mountainous forest, and it was obviously November. So in this part of America, it'd be snowy. So it's just very difficult to find anything. And obviously they didn't find anything. So early December, the FBI turned their attention to the money instead of the DB Cooper because they realised that it was just almost impossible. So the money came from a ransom package from a bank in Seattle. So all the money's serial numbers were traced. So I think a lot of banks, they have these ransom packages just so that when someone asks, like demands a ransom, they already have the money and they already know the serial number, which I didn't actually know. That's quite cool. However, not a single note with a serial number matching the records was found for 10 years. So for 10 years, none of this cash was found. And I mean, it's a lot of cash because it's $20 bills up to $200,000. That's, I mean, you can do the math, I can't, but I mean, that's tens of thousands of notes that just weren't ever found in circulation, which is quite crazy. But yeah, so 10 years later, it's 1981, $5,000 were found by a boy buried, and obviously these were degraded near a river in remote Portland. This money was 27 kilometers away from the drop zone, of which the FBI thought was the drop zone. So it wasn't too far away, but it was quite far away, considering he must have like travelled that far in such a short distance, or maybe they just got the drop zone wrong. But some speculated that the money fell into the river and was washed ashore on the small beach called Tina Bar. Now a lot of people have theorized that Tina Mucklow had some sort of part in this because I don't know, Tina Marklow, Tina Bar. Maybe there's something there, but there really isn't anything there. And also the flow of the river. This completely destroys that theory, because the flow of the river is opposite to what it should have been. That would have made it end up on this, like, for the water to bring it up. You know what I mean? So the FBI just couldn't come up with an explanation as to why the 3 bundles of cash was able to end up in this place. Like, there was just no logical reason at all, so it was really confusing. So there was something about this cash that really confused the FBI, and that was that the rubber bands holding together the money, they were still intact. Now testing, like, previously, shows that these rubber bands can only last for up to a year without being fully degraded. So it's really confused the FBI, because these rubber bands that are supposed to last for a year lasted for 10 years, which is like it's impossible. So some people in the FBI theorise that they're protected under the sand at this beach by the sediment, so they're protected by the elements that weren't able to degrade the rubber bands. So that means that within a year, someone must have buried the money there. So that either means that either D.B. Cooper buried it there, or someone found D.B. Cooper's money or his body as well, and buried it there for some reason. Now, even today, the rest of the money nor D.B. Cooper has actually been found, which is crazy. So that's the story of D.B. Cooper, which is pretty cool. So till today, he's never been found, which is crazy. But so I'm going to go into some conspiracy theories of what happened now. Just because, a lot of people think he died, a lot of people think he didn't die, and he's just got away with it, which is pretty epic, I'm not gonna lie. But the theory that Cooper actually died as a result of the jump is pretty valid. Now, Flight 305 was 10,000 feet in the air, and it was travelling 230 miles per hour in a storm, like a rainstorm as well. Now, the winds were very violent, and for someone who may have never parachuted before, it would be near impossible to parachute, because the parachute that he was in wasn't able to be steered. It was like an old World War II military parachute, so he literally would have been taken wherever the wind wanted him to go. And also, he wasn't dressed well for the terrain below. He was dressed in loafers and a suit, and I think he had a trench coat as well. But the trench coat isn't gonna, you're gonna have to walk kilometers in partially snowy mountains in a suit. You know what I mean? He might be able to do it, but it was very cold, and he might have frozen or something. So they think that he may have had some experience in parachuting due to some things that he said on board. But as I said, the chute was not steerable, so having a specific location he wanted to land in was very unlikely, because he couldn't get to that location. You know what I mean? He just had to land wherever the elements took him. One of the 4 chutes that was given to him was actually a dummy chute as well. That was his secondary chute apparently. The primary chute was an older, functional but probably inferior chute that was, as I said, a military chute. So he basically chose the 2 worst chutes they could possibly choose, because one of them just wouldn't work, and the second one would probably work, but it's not a great parachute. You know what I mean? I'm not a parachutist, so I have no idea what this is, but I mean, if any of you do parachuting, then fair enough. However, investigators think that he may have unpacked the dummy chute and used it as an extra bag for the money. So he knew that it was a dummy chute and just used it as money instead. So, and also the older chute he chose may have been a sign of familiarity and experience, as it was a military chute, whereas the other one was a newer civilian luxury chute. So if a civilian wants to skydive, they'd use that. So this might show that he had military background, because if he's been a parachuter or paratrooper in wars, voice break, whoops. If he had a military background, then he might just want to go with something that he knows. Could just be a bit easier, you know what I mean? And he also had another thing that indicated his military background was that he actually had really good knowledge of military bases. So when they were flying, he would like say to the air stewardess, "Oh, this is base so and so," and like the normal person just wouldn't have that type of knowledge. And the Boeing in this case, I think it was like Boeing 727. I didn't write that down, but it was the same Boeing that was used in the Vietnam War to drop paratroopers. So he chose a military parachute that was used in Vietnam. He specifically chose to do this using a plane that he would have been familiar with because he used it in Vietnam. Like, and he had a really good military background knowledge. So I think that he had military background, just because I don't think all of this was. I think he planned all of this. So yeah, that's basically that. But when Tina Mocklow asked him about his motive, because obviously nobody has any idea why he did this, he just said, "I don't have a grudge against your airline. I just have a grudge." So he didn't say who he has a grudge against, but he definitely doesn't have a grudge against the airline. So he didn't like have anything against Northwest Airlines. But some other observations that the flight crew actually found out was that he demonstrated extensive technical knowledge of aircraft and flying in general, which again closely linked to a possible military background, because if he was a paratrooper, he would know a lot about the planes. He recognised the city of Tacoma from the air, which, as I said, he was able to pinpoint like military bases from the air, which is crazy. He did not want to inform passengers he didn't want the passengers to know that they were being hijacked. Like, so when they got off the plane in Seattle, most of them had no idea that they were being hijacked. So he was very quiet about this whole thing. And when he jumped, obviously, as I said, he covered his eyes with those sunglasses, which would obviously protect his eyes from the winds when parachuting. And he was also very mindful of his belongings. So even the note he gave to the flight attendant was like, he took it back, so that no handwriting was found by the FBI apart from his name on his flight ticket. So they had no way of really like tracing back handwriting or anything. Like, he kept everything to himself, and he didn't leave behind too many clues that he didn't have to leave behind, because the 8 cigarette butts that he left behind was actually lost. Like, they took it as evidence but lost it somehow, which is stupid, because out of the evidence they left behind, it was really the only evidence that may have been able to leave like good evidence, which is just stupid. Like, it's so dumb. But so even if he was able to survive the landing and then trek for miles in loafers and a suit in a snowy forest in late November, probably -degrees, because it was at night as well, no missing person report was filed for the man with the description of DB Cooper, which suggests that because obviously beforehand he must have had a job. Even if he didn't have a family, he must have had a job, because he wasn't homeless. Like, he was wearing a good suit, so even his like job would like be like, "Hey, where's this man?" But nothing. Like, he didn't go missing, which could suggest that he actually did survive, and he was able to go back to his normal life within a couple of days, obviously, which is mental. Like, one day you're jumping out of a plane, like stealing 200k, and then the next day you're back in the house with your wife. That's crazy. So yeah, no missing man report was filed, which is crazy. Now this fact is really cool. But while trying to find the suspects, the police found a man in Portland, where near the drop zone, and he was called DB Cooper, and he was quickly crossed off the list as like not the man. But the press got a slight mix-up and released the name DB Cooper, even though that the real suspect was called Dan Cooper, and the name stuck. So DB Cooper that we actually know and that you're going to hear about, that's actually not his name. He's called Dan Cooper, but because of the press, DB Cooper just stuck. Which DB Cooper, it sounds better than Dan Cooper. I'm not gonna lie. So there's a French comic about a paratrooper called Dan Cooper. Now, this isn't sold in the USA, but it is sold in Canada. So obviously, there's some French-speaking parts of Canada, like Quebec and places like that. Which could suggest that he's actually possibly from Canada instead of the USA, because to have a paratrooper called Dan Cooper, it's so close to like what he parachutes out of a plane and he named himself Dan Cooper, because obviously Dan Cooper might not be his real name and it probably isn't his real name. So this suggests that he's actually from Canada, because he had a really good American accent, and obviously Canadians and Americans sound alike. So it's very unlikely that he's from France. So the likelihood is that he's actually from Canada, French-speaking Canada, and that he was like able to speak French and English. Another indication that his native country was Canada, or just a different country, was that while negotiating with the captain, he said that he wanted negotiable American currency. Now, if it was American, would he say American currency, or would he just say currency? Like I wouldn't say the British pound. I would just say the pound. You know what I mean? Like, if it's your native currency, you wouldn't say your country's name. Like, it's just a bit odd. You know what I mean? So that's what makes me think that he's actually Canadian. Now I'm going to take you through. There was 5 suspects that I found. That was actually like, they're all quite close. Like, they're all believable. They really could be him. So the first one, he's called Robert W. Rackstraw. Now, all of them had a couple of reasons why they could be him, but Rackstraw, he had a military background, which obviously closely links to everything that D.B. Cooper said and the ways that he was able to act and all of that. Rackstraw knew how to make a bomb. He had a criminal record, so obviously the dynamite that D.B. Cooper had could be linked to this bomb. This Rackstraw had a skydiving uncle called John Cooper, so he may have like used that as a name to like make it seem like you know what I mean. He was discharged from the army 5 months before the hijacking, and he never denied being DB Cooper. Now, a lot of people would be like, "Oh yeah, I'm DB Cooper," just to get a bit of attention. But maybe this Rackstraw, see, he'd just been discharged from the army, so maybe he needed money, obviously, so he just used his skills to take all this money, you know what I mean, and parachute out, because he knew how to parachute. Now this guy here, he's probably the most convincing. He's called Kenneth P. Christensen. Now again, he had a military background, which again would suggest how he was able to parachute and stuff like that. He worked for Northwest Airlines as a pilot before and after the hijacking. So he knew the planes of Northwest. He knew everything, like the flight course, everything. He was 45 years old in 1971, and the description of D.B. Cooper was mid-40s, so he matched the description. And he resembled the hijacker. All the I can't remember if it was Tina Mucklow or the Schaffner girl. But they saw a picture of Christensen and they said that it was him. Like, he had a striking resemblance. Now this bit is quite crazy, because he told his brother that he had a secret before he died, but he couldn't tell him. Which I don't understand why he would say that. Like, you're dying and then you're like, "Oh, I have a secret, but I'm not going to tell you." And just after he died, his family realised that he had a sudden increase of $200,000 into his bank accounts. Like, so obviously they would take it, which is obviously the same amount of money as D.B. Cooper. I think that's just crazy. Like, these blow my mind. Like, because I honestly think D.B. Cooper got away, and it could be any one of these. So the next guy is called Richard F. McCoy, and he does look like D.B. Cooper, like exactly like him. He also hijacked and parachuted from a Boeing 727 in 1972, so a year after the D.B. Cooper parachute. Like, almost exactly the same thing happened. He used an explosive device. He used handwritten notes. He used the phrase "no funny stuff," which is also a phrase from D.B. Cooper's writing. the note to the attendant. He demanded 500k in cash and 4 parachutes, and he bailed out the same way, so the back stairs, and he did exactly the same thing. However, he used a weapon, like a gun. He was only 29 years old the year before when DB Cooper happened, and he wasn't really recognised by any of the 3 flight attendants, which I'm confused about because I think he does look quite similar. But I honestly don't think it is this guy because I think it's too similar to the DB Cooper case. I think he was just a copycat and he just looked up to DB Cooper and wanted to do the same but failed. He actually got caught this time. So the next suspect, the fourth suspect, Dwayne Webber. So Dwayne Webber, he all of his life, or majority, like a lot of his life, he had a knee injury, so he'd walk with a limp, and he told his wife that he injured it by jumping from a plane, like skydiving. He also had nightmares where like his wife would wake up and like he's shouting and he's screaming about leaving his fingerprints on the aft stairs, and the aft stairs are the stairs at the back. That's what they're called. So he's unconsciously shouting out about leaving these fingerprints in a plane, and it's such a specific place, so specific to the DB Cooper case. So maybe he like touched the railings or something, and he accidentally left his fingerprints behind, and he thinks he's going to get caught. So obviously he's having nightmares about it. And he actually took his wife to Tina Bar in 1979, where that money was found. So he obviously knew the place. He knew the place where the money was, and he didn't really have any other connection to the crime itself, but just the stuff like him unconsciously screaming about leaving fingerprints at the crime scene, and he went to Tina Bar, and it's just he had an injury from a jumping out of a plane. Stuff like that is so like it's mental. Now the last and the fifth suspect is William J. Smith, and this guy does look identical to him as well. He was a bit older in this picture, but from what the FBI think DB Cooper would have looked like in his old age, it's almost exactly like William Smith. So William Smith, he also had a military background. He was 43 years old in 1971, which is the same age as what the flight attendants thought DB Cooper was. He matched the physical description, and he actually knew one of his friends from flight school or high school was called Daniel Cooper, and this was one of his best friends that I think he saw die in one of the wars. So he was like a school friend, and like he saw him die, and he worked in like the planes. He worked with like planes. He was like a paratrooper with him. So maybe he used his name just as a name, like it was in his head. Now, some motives to William J. Smith is that he was impacted by a large bankruptcy in 1970, a year before. So obviously he desperately needed money, like he really needed the money, and again he used his paratrooping skills to like hijack a plane and do all this. And he became bankrupt because the railway company that he worked for like went bust, and one of the biggest reasons why it went bust is because of the airline companies started taking over this district. So he may have had a grudge against the Northwestern Airlines for taking over, but DB Cooper did say, I don't have a grudge against the airlines, so maybe that's debunked. But obviously William Smith, he knew all the railroads, so maybe he was able to use the railroads as a way to escape the area really quickly, because he was never found. And the area around Portland is almost definitely where DB Cooper would have jumped from, like using the flight plan. So like maybe, and he was never found, and usually people like this are easily found. So maybe he was able to use the railway to get away, either by like jumping onto a train, like a freight train, or just using the tracks to get somewhere else. It's just crazy. Like, comment down below who you think like is DB Cooper, if it is one of these five, because it's mental. Like any one of them really could be. I think it's either Kenneth Christensen or William Smith. Like I think like almost definitely one of them for me. Um, Now the whole reason why I wanted to do this video is because of like the character in Breaking Bad. I think that's just a really cool thing that they added, but that was really cool, and the whole story that they did where he didn't get caught, but he got caught for something else. That was really cool. But I honestly think DB Cooper he got away. Like I think he was from Canada. Had military background. Um, and I think he used his military background to jump out the plane with the money because he did everything so perfectly. Like he didn't leave behind any evidence. He knew where to jump out. He knew what he needed to jump out. Like, and I think even though he wasn't wearing good stuff, he just had it too much experience. And he was able to survive, and I think he probably got back to Canada or um, wherever William Smith or one of the other suspects lived, and I think he just carried on with his life. To be honest, like it's crazy how he actually got away. It's mad. Yes, this case officially closed in 2016. So they were for about 50 years. They were looking into this case, and they just couldn't find anything, which I think is mental. Like they didn't close it off to 50. I would have closed it sooner, to be honest. But yeah, DB Cooper he got away scot free, and it's mental. So yeah, comment down below what you think about this video. Um, I went for a more serious approach this time. Um, I like it. I want to do a few more of these unsolved mysteries, so hopefully you like it and like the video if you did. And I'll see you soon.